How you going, Rod?
Yeah, not too bad. How about you?
Not too bad. Good. Thanks for inviting me down here. You might notice that this is not my normal recording studio. I've come down to Fronius headquarters down in Melbourne to talk about a bit of an issue that Fronius has at the moment.
Well, let's talk about it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this has been going on for a little while. We've been talking about this since last year, actually. And I thought we really need to start telling the industry about this, like widespread. You know what I'm like. I just a bit of a loudmouth. And so, yeah, you've agreed that we should come down and have a talk about the Fronius fan issue, which is such an ironic problem because I've always been a big fan of Fronius. Pardon the pun, because I've been partly because of the big fan on the front of the Fronius inverter. And ironically, it kind of bit me in the butt because this is what we've been having issues with the last year or so, right? Yeah. So we've been installing Fronius since the Gen24 since early 2021, I think. So that's 4.5 years.
Yeah.
And last year sometime, I think we've been having some issues. Can you tell us what the issue is with that?
Yeah, what we discovered, I guess, on some of the sites that you had is with the fan. So because of being on the front, you've got this ring around it. The sites where there was an issue with a Gecko, what it's done is it's gotten jammed between the blade and the ring. So pretty much all the different sites that you've showed us have had exactly the same issue. So the problem is there when the Gecko gets stuck, it jams the fan. Obviously, being an active cooling device, then that's the main thing that keeps it cool, helps the distributor heat. And so the heat's not able to distribute as much as it should do. And so it goes into temperature derating. So it doesn't damage the inverter at all. It's got protection mechanisms and things in there. However, depending on the outside temperature or how much power it's producing, it could go into derating, meaning it'll reduce its power to protect itself. So that's obviously not an ideal situation with that. So yeah, that's the...
Yeah,
I guess.
I think we should point out, though, this is a Queensland issue, right? What I've found out over the years, like I've been, a Sparky longer than I've been doing solar, and I used to go around TAFEs and schools and stuff like that and replace all exit lights. They would blow up because geckos got in there. It's a Brisbane issue, potentially even North Queensland issue as well, where geckos are. I found out that this was really just a Queensland issue a few years ago when I was... talking with Scott from Catch Power, when he brought out the first Catch Power like 10 years ago, their first version, and it looked like an unsealed exit light to me. And I'm like, Scott, this is going to just fry geckos. It'll be a gecko catcher, great name for it. But I think it was 12 months to the day later, we found a fried gecko in one of the Catch Powers. Obviously, they fixed that issue too. Now it's kind of come and bit me because I've been going basically 100% Fronius, doing a little bit of Powerwall 3 now. We've got heaps of these in the field. And I've had probably the number I think is almost 50 geckos. I don't know the exact number, but almost 50 geckos being sacrificed in these fans. So we didn't really see the issue for the first couple of years, I don't think. I don't know the exact timeline, but it was some point of last year that I thought, come on, Rod, this is more than one or two geckos that we're killing here. You guys looked into it. And came up with a solution, and I've got to say ridiculously quickly. I think within a month we had a solution. Can you explain what that was?
Yeah, so we basically looked at it, like as you said, it's getting stuck between, as I said before, between the fin and the ring. So the first idea was to, stop them getting in there. So that would involve having some kind of mesh around it or around the outside. Then we thought about that. If we do that, then you need to clean the mesh, etc. And then kind of came up with the idea of, well, if it's getting stuck between the ring and the blade, let's, do we actually need the ring there? So the R&D guys looked into that, and obviously we did some tests. Obviously you've been doing some field tests with it as well, and that seemed to be the easiest solution. And funnily enough, with that, there is two good side effects with it too. So it is a little bit quieter again. The Gen24s are a lot quieter than the snap inverters were. And also, in addition to that, the cooling distribution or the effectiveness of the cooling is also slightly better as well.
Yeah, so ironic, you got rid of that plastic and solved for 3 problems. Oh, they weren't problems, but yeah, you made it cool better, you made it quieter again, and stopped killing geckos or catching geckos in there. Yeah, okay, Rod, so that was really good that International came up with a really quick solution for us, and we've been using in the field since last year. It's kind of really reduced the number of our problems that we're going to have going forward. But I kind of got a bit frustrated. I guess we were sorting this out with our jobs without me thinking about it too much further. And then a while later, I'm like, hang on, what's happening with the rest of the market? We need to bring out these fans into the stock that's coming into Australia, right?
Yeah.
How are we going with that issue is the first part. Have you solved the issue?
So basically, we don't make the fans. It comes from a fan supplier or a component supplier. So we had discussions with them about how to make them without the ring. So unfortunately, it's taken longer than we wanted to. So because they're made with big jigs, etc., and those jigs need to be changed. It's quite expensive to do so. They also weren't convinced. They wanted to do their own testing as well to make sure the fan was still stable. So hence that's why it's taken longer. So, but now it is. It's been starting to get rolled out. So officially in production, it goes in September.
Okay.
And so after that, then all the inverters. So not just, as I said, it's just a Queensland issue, but every single Gen24 will have the new fan type on it. So
yeah, okay. And so that's good. So going forward, we're not going to have issues. I think a big concern is going to be in the industry. What happens to all those, 4.5 years of my systems? Well, a lot of them, those we've solved already. But what's going to happen with them? I kind of thought about this, Rod, and I was thinking, if I installed a system and we did all our cable work underneath the panels correctly, tightened it all up, did a good job of it, kept all the standards, and a possum gets in there and starts chewing on the cable, it's not really my fault, is it? But it's going to be pretty nasty for me to tell my customer to bugger off. It's your issue, right? So it is a little bit about that with fauna and flora. If a gecko gets in there, I don't know, is it a Fronius issue? How are you dealing with it?
So, like, if there is ones where it's caught in the field, then we do have a few solutions for that. So it varies on which installer it is, etc. So, but the best thing is to contact our tech support or a service center, and then they'll provide the options of how to do it. So,
yeah, okay.
If it does happen to come up. So
Fronius is owning the problem. You're not ducking and weeding and saying it's a gecko, not you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. Well, that's good. Well, yeah, thanks for letting me hear that. Hey, so when I came back from Melbourne to Brisbane, I realised that me and Rod had forgotten a couple of really obvious points about how you can check whether you've actually got a gecko in your fan. So one way you can do is just go into your Fronius Solar Web and then into service messages, and you may or may not see a warning, a 1090 warning come up, which means your inverter is overheating. So there's a couple of reasons it could be overheating. Is your installer installed this in partial sun or in a fairly hot location, and the inverter is deraining because it's running too hot. When they installed it in a cupboard or something like that. So that might be the reason. It also may mean that your fan is stuck because there's something in the way, like a gecko. So this is a really simple way of checking whether there is a gecko in there. By the way, that 1090 warning seems to come and go a little bit. And I've got a theory about why that is later. First thing you need to do is turn your inverter off. If it's at night time or if it's overcast and not producing much solar, just whack the switch off. But if it's sunshine, go and turn off your solar supply main switch at your switchboard first. And then when you turn this switch here off, it won't arc because there's no power running through it. So quarter of a turn anti-clockwise to the O position, and that will help you then, then you take these two little screws out. So this is a posi-drive screwdriver that I'm using here, but you can also just use a flathead screwdriver. A fairly small flathead screwdriver will work. So it's quarter of a turn anti-clockwise that just unlocks the little mechanism. So it's not a full screw, just a quarter of a turn anti-clockwise, and then the inverter comes off. The inverter cover comes off. You don't have to be a Sparky to do this, by the way. This is completely weatherproof here. You can hose this down and everything. It's, no problem. And crikey, look what we've got. Look at this little critter. We've got a gecko. So just make sure she's dead. Give her that's it. Get rid of it. And your fan can spin again. So all good with no problem. Now, my theory about why this 1090 error may come and go, may disappear. I'm not sure why why it disappears. But if you've got a gecko in there for 30 days or 60 days in hot weather, that's just going to decompose, and I reckon it'll fall away and your fan will start going again. I haven't proven that yet, but I don't really think this is going to be a big ongoing issue. Either way, go in there. If you see a gecko, clean her out. Maybe you might want to tell your installer, can you come around sometime when you're in my area and adjust this fan so we don't have that shroud around it. But to be fair, it's probably not a big deal. Anyway, it's not something that you're going to call your Sparky out on a Sunday for. So we'll just chuck the cover back on so it sort of hooks onto these two hooks up here, and your two little screws back up again. It doesn't matter which order you turn this back on at. Turn this on and then go and turn it on at your switchboard if you need to as well. Wait for a couple of minutes and she'll start back up again. You'll probably notice that fan comes on in the middle of the day or when the inverter's running fairly hot after that. Geckos will do no damage to that fan at all. It's just a matter of clearing them out. Anyway, thanks for that. While we're here and I'm picking on you, let's talk about another issue. Not as big of an issue, but Wi-Fi. There's been another Fronius Wi-Fi issue recently.
Yeah, so you got recently is probably in the last few software versions that we've had. So we've seen that a few people online. There's been a bit of a talk online about it, of Gen24s in particular, dropping off randomly. Yeah. So we've been spending a fair bit of time trying to work it out, and the biggest problem's been not being able to recreate it ourselves. So we're doing for things and you go to site and it does it so randomly, it's been hard. But we have found that there's a few router models, brands that are doing it more than others. So
you mean your home Wi-Fi modem?
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Okay, sure. So your home Wi-Fi modem, some of them, a lot of them nowadays are mesh systems, so they're different little satellites around the house. With those, there's a couple of mesh systems which we found were particularly troublesome. So we got them in, set them up, tried to recreate it and set up complex sniffers and package capture devices, etc. Managed to get to recreate the issue. And we did actually find that on two of these models that they were actually sending incorrect package lengths. And you could argue that our Wi-Fi chip and driver should be able to handle that thing, because we can see quite a few other devices. In some cases, other devices were falling off, but in most of the cases, people were saying it's only inverter dropping off. So we need to do some kind of workaround in our system. We have done that now and rolled that in, been testing a whole bunch of beta sites with it, so problem sites, and it's really... They're running perfectly now. So that firmware is officially coming out as 1.37 Gen24 and inverter firmware, and that's a fix which we're going to just kind of explain to the market what was happening there, because that was a fair bit of talk around the market of it.
Yeah, and Shane, my service manager, has been working with you on that as well, and he was saying that that new version seems to be working. It's solved the issue, right? So, so that's pretty cool. Okay, now that I've aired all your dirty laundry, it'd be good to talk about. There's a lot of things happening with Fronius, right? A lot of new products coming out. Probably can't talk too much about them now, but there's a big conspicuous battery sitting behind us here.
Yeah, the reserver, yes. So there's probably people heard a little bit about that coming from Europe and Intersolar and things like that.
But we might have a bit of a chat about this after this, do another video and launch that at the right time. So the next video after this, we'll be talking more about the battery and the new Fronius EV charger.
Yeah, so the AC EV charger, so our Watt Pilot. This is the Watt Pilot Flex. A few changes on it. So the design is different compared to the old one. So it's not a top entry with a cable already with it. It's you can come in a lot of, say, in stores, the customers are used to being able to come in, let's say, rear entry, or let's say hide the cables, like let's say the inverters, etc. There's been a feature which people really like, and so we've done a similar thing with the Watt Pilot Flex, and it's got a tethered cable. It's also got a LAN connection on it too, and on top of that, with AC bidirectional charging, we've got the chip in there, which still needs some things to be done to it, but in case that becomes a thing, then something that we'll work with as well. So
bidirectional charging, and that'll be married with particular cars. You don't know much about that?
It'll be up to the car. Like there's a lot of cars and manufacturers are working on which solutions they're doing. Some of them allow it, some of them don't. So it's a real evolving space in that, but we've got the hardware there at least to be ready.
Yeah, okay. And you've actually got one of those out the front here charging your EVs. I've got to say, it's a lot more Fronius looking than the old Watt Pilot. It's a really nice design product. So looking forward to that coming. And the third one, you've got larger hybrid inverters.
Yep. So everyone's been screaming for that as well. So the larger 3-phase hybrid inverters with backup, that's also coming. So again, don't want to give a date with that because there's quite a few things out of our hands, like CEC and test lab queues, etc. So looking towards the end of this year or start of next year is around that ballpark period. So
okay. But everything's happening. So, thanks for letting me come down and having a chat about some good things and bad things.
Always have a chat, Mark.
And stay tuned to the next video where we go a little bit more in depth about some new products.